Over 84% of our world's energy supply is from fossil fuels. As a result, natural resources are depleted across the world. Experts predict that our fossil fuels and natural resources will be exhausted by 2060 if the present trends continue. Our natural resources are not only at risk of being exhausted, but it is also tremendously harmful to the environment. To begin with, extraction practices have a significant negative influence on the ecosystem. The exploitation of fossil fuels can really damage the air and water and cause major pollution. Second, the refining of these fossil fuels requires a significant amount of water. The tar sands of Alberta, for example, utilize millions of tons of water to generate steam in order to extract oil from the sand. As a result, the water becomes polluted, providing a new environmental concern. There is a way out of this though. As we advance in technology and innovations, we should use our knowledge to innovate a new fuel that can be a sustainable option for the future. Out of all the sustainable choices, we believe that algae are the most viable solution.
Before we dive any deeper, it is important to know the background behind algae. Algae is a basic non-flowering aquatic plant that can be grown in any body of water and can be easily farmed in warm climates. Most of the energy that is absorbed in the algae is from the sun during the process of photosynthesis. This creates many oils in the microorganism, allowing algae to be turned into biofuels. So how does this happen? Well, first, algae is put into a raceway, which is an artificial flowing river, and this is where the algae is grown. During the growing process, the algae absorbs more and more carbon in sunlight, converting it to valuable lipids, which are oils. At a certain point, the algae is extracted, dried, and prepared for the oil extraction process, where it is turned to algae biofuel.
So how can algae be effective in limiting the amounts of fossil fuels? As we said before, algae is a biofuel resource that can be farmed on salty water. One of the major advantages of utilizing algae for biofuels is that it does not need many resources. According to the United States Department of Energy, algae can produce at least 30% more energy than the crops-based biofuel. Also, algae are good at recycling carbon from the atmosphere. While algae account for less than 2% of the world plant carbon, they absorb and fix up to 50% of atmospheric CO2, which is between 30 and 50 billion metric tons per year, which is close to the amount of carbon we release. And when compared to petroleum diesel, the United States Environmental Protection Agency believes that algal-based biodiesel generated by algae can cut greenhouse gas emissions by 60%. There is no doubt that algae is a renewable source of energy, and in a way, a better renewable source compared to others, as it has many benefits, surpassing other sustainable energy source types. With this in mind, the next big question is, how can algae be implemented in society? Algae farms only require raceways, a man-made, free-flowing algae river, so it is rather easy to implement. According to Ennio Macchi, a professor at the Department of Energy at the University of Milan, one solution is that algae will act as a carbon offset alongside any power plant. As we said before, carbon and sunlight is required for algae to produce biofuels. And as power plants produce more and more carbon every day, this is actually useful for algae as it can absorb all that carbon. In a way, making these power plants create less carbon, as the carbon being produced is absorbed by algae and turned into valuable renewable biofuels. Thus, Macchi suggests that algae farms should be a part of any power plant system as it can reduce the carbon created.
Though this may seem like a solution to combat fossil fuels, it really isn't. This will only help slightly. As we said before, extraction processes of these fuels cause detrimental harm to the environment. That's why we need a system to replace fossil fuels. Another potential option is to fully implement algae farms into society to create biofuels, which in return can serve power plants. America, for example, already has more than 30 biofuel algae farms, which is more compared to the rest of the world combined. This is mainly because America has lots of support from the government. The Department of Energy grants funds to support biofuel facilities, and their investments and support allows scientists and engineers to develop algae systems that create biofuels. Compared to other countries, America is a pioneer in this technology, as they have an abundance of support from the government, corporations, and citizens. This support is important in getting this technology off the ground. That's why, looking forward, we believe governments and corporations around the world should support scientists and engineers to develop revolutionary algae farms that promise a brighter future. In conclusion, algae is the fuel of the future. It can help lessen our reliance on fossil fuels and mitigate the current climate change crisis by drastically lowering CO2 emissions. However, in order to do so, we must collaborate, support one another, and invest in scientists and engineers to develop technologies such as algae biofuel, so that our future is in the right hands for the next generation. Algae is only the beginning of the fight against climate change, And we hope that in the future, society will be able to innovate and discover new technologies that will aid in the betterment of our planet. So, thank you for watching, and we hope you learned something about algae.